And one of the key parts at the start of the roadmap development is around governance. So governance has many definitions, but it's really about roles and responsibilities. So who is going to take on the responsibility for doing specific tasks for geodesy, and this can be in your country or it can be in the region. And we've talked a bit about this already this morning, and we've seen it in action with the work that Fernand is proposing. We can get started with the help of South Africa, and also with the platform that RCMRD are using to show where the cause data is. That's I would call that an informal governance structure. You don't have agreements in place between you all that's formalized to say how you're going to do this. You don't have regular meetings yet on how you're going to organize this, but you're starting with these informal structures of cooperation and collaboration. And a lot of this comes from the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework. Now, some of you would have seen this. This is something that is used often within the UN-GGCE. And you will also see that if you have a look at your roadmaps, I have explained how you can do geodesy with respect to an integrated geospatial information framework. So can I just get a show of hands of people it's probably those who are more involved in UN GGIM activities. How many of you have heard about this process? Good. So yeah, a bit over half. That's good. And what it does, it's a framework, right? So it doesn't tell you how to do everything, but it's a framework that talks about the importance of things like governance, technology, and people when you're doing something within your government. And it gives you advice and guidance on how you can set that up for whether it be your geospatial information systems in your country, or whether it be related to geodesy. What we've done with the roadmap is we looked through these categories and we tried to personalize that message or cater that message for geodesy. So as you go through the roadmap, you can see that there's work in there for you to do to try and establish the governance that you need. Think about the policy and frameworks. Financial, there's stuff in there on business cases. It's not all just the technical components about data and data management, but there's information in there around communication and engagement, standards development. I haven't addressed everything in the roadmap because I think if you try and cover too much, it becomes overly complicated. But what I've tried to do is outline the steps that you can go through in the roadmap that's making sure that you're covering all these key criteria across the framework so that you can use it. So I'm grateful we had this framework in place, but I'm also recognizing that if you look at all the documents that were produced for the IGIF, it's something like over 300, 400 pages of information. It can be quite overwhelming to figure out how could I apply this to geodesy. So that's why we've gone through and developed this personalized list for you to go through and start applying this to geodesy in your country. I just think sometimes it's important for us in the UN to create that link between these big documents that get produced and you think, well, how am I going to use this? It's only by having things like this in place that you can create the more personalized ones underneath it. So there is value in this work that gets done. So good governance is really critical to a country's geospatial reference system because it ensures that not only is the global reference system, geospatial reference system accurate, but importantly, the governance helps with things like sustainability, adoption, and management. So this is the more ongoing components. And there's been a number of you that I've talked to this week that said, oh, we've computed these transformation parameters, or we've computed these new coordinates, or we have this infrastructure, but no one's using it. The reason no one's using it is because you don't have the right governance structures in place. You haven't talked to the stakeholders. You haven't engaged with your management line. You may have done something that's technically brilliant, but no one can use it unless the governance is in place and you've communicated the importance of it. So there's things like strategies, policies, and legal frameworks that you need to think about. If you want to change the datum in a country, how do you think the land surveying community is going to feel about updating that if you haven't talked to them yet? You're proposing to put all this extra work onto them that they need to do something with, and you tell them it'll be better, but all they can see is you've created more work for me. There's also an opportunity to get benefit from aligning with international standards. And again, like the framework that I mentioned, there's things out there that are done at a high level which you can benefit from using. The trick is doing that practical step of personalizing those international standards to suit your needs. And this is where we within the center can help you make that step. So just the highlights here. The importance of the governance. I'm hoping the screen will update in a moment. Having a bit of trouble today. I think it knows it's Friday. It's the other important aspects is funding. If you're looking at, you might get that short-term funding for the capital funding to go and install stations, but if you don't have that governance structure or you can't explain that message, that's when you start to lose money into the future. If you say we want these core stations to be installed, it's also important that you have a champion or your governance structure that understands that you're going to need money every year to maintain them, to pay the firmware licensing, to analyze the data. This is not a one-off payment that you're asking for. And you only get that if you have this ongoing work that is done with your governance structure. You can also then build awareness across government. As I mentioned the other day, interaction with those other government departments is going to be critical because they are going to be the ones who are using the information, whether it's for urban planning, infrastructure development, national security, whatever you think is going to work in your country. Work with those people and have those people involved in the governance of geodesy in your country. We've just got some groups here to consider, and I'm not going to read it all out, but because we've covered a lot of it already. Land authorities, we've talked a lot about that, and we heard a great presentation from John yesterday focused on that. Other ones to think about are your water authorities. So I was mentioning to some of our friends a couple of days ago that you could go and talk to your land management authorities about GNSS cores stations because they are going to benefit greatly from that work you do on GNSS cores. But when you go to the water authorities, you might want to work with them on the development of a geoid model. So you can cater your message depending on the audience. The water authorities are very interested in having accurate water flow. So they may want to invest with you on the development of a new geoid model or a height datum for the country. The next one that I have on the list, which will come up shortly, I hope, is the Defense Department. And the defense departments, whether we like it or not, they often have one of the biggest budgets within the government. So if you're looking for money, it doesn't hurt to go and talk to people with the biggest budgets. If you can ask them, what are their concerns when it comes to national security? There is no doubt that there'll be some connection between what you do and what they need. Air services, I mentioned the Australian example of that high integrity signal that we get from the satellite-based augmentation system. That comes from having a connection with the air services sector. And as we talked about this morning, the maritime industry. Some countries also have space agencies. Again, this is a way to talk to government in a way that they might find more exciting. If you talk to government about space, it can excite them a lot more than talking to them about the Earth. Standards, not quite as exciting, but it's good to have them engaged. And you should be trying to engage with them in your country very early. Often the standards, people complain that you've come to us after you've already done something. And then you may have done something that's maybe not in compliance with international standards. So bring them in early and explain to them what you're trying to do. And who knows, they may actually help you with that process rather than you having to do it all yourself. Another good one, and I've seen connections with this around the world, is meteorology. I just showed you an example where in Australia, the Geoscience Australia and the Bureau of Meteorology work very closely together. There's also an opportunity to share sites. You might find with the meteorology people that they have a range of sensors and observation sites around your country. Getting access to land and the management of that land or the leasing of that land, if you can do that on the same site, it makes your job and their job a lot easier. So that's something to consider. Sorry. Yes. Ryan's just told me that it says metrology. Shows how good my eyes are. So meteorology is important, and metrology is as well. Metrology refers to you may have people within your government who are responsible for the legal definition of datum. And so if you do have people in policy departments who are responsible for the legal definition of the datum, you want to engage with them early, particularly if you're thinking about changing the datum in your country. That goes back to the point made before around land management. And some countries have laws for this and some don't. So you want to know what's currently in place within your country. Finally, there's groups like the capacity development and education. I think there's a great connection here this week between academia and the regional organizations like RCMRD and Afrogist. This is an opportunity to get, if you're developing something like a steering committee for improved governance in your country, it would be good to have people like those who work with Rachel or Lazarus invited along to provide their expert advice and assistance, because they're seeing what's happening in a range of countries. They would be, I'm sure if they can't do it, they'd be able to recommend someone else who can provide that assistance and advice for your country. Also with the academic sector, I've heard this week that there's a range of people in the academic sector working on some incredibly complex and technical ways to solve problems. And the experience might exist within academia. You may not have that experience in your government department. So link with those universities and you can find that they might do a lot of the hard work for you, because it's a great opportunity for them to work on a challenging problem. So try and look for these connections. And then local knowledge, Indigenous communities. This is something that I'm seeing increasingly done for science all around the world. There's great way to talk to the community about what you're doing when you're getting involved in the local communities, getting their input, getting their engagement, getting their knowledge of how things have been done in the past can often help a great deal for you to tell that story and explain the importance of what you're doing. In terms of what the structure looks like, there's many different types. At the top there, the structure I've shown is quite a simple one. You could have a steering committee. That would be the top box. And then in the middle, you can have an implementation committee. So this is where you can have your strategic guidance and advice with senior leaders at the top, and they understand what you're doing. And hopefully they make sure that you have budget to do what you need to do. And they're the people that you want to use your 30-second elevator pitch on to make sure that they're engaged and involved in what you're doing. The next level down in the middle is the implementation committee. That's where the work's getting done. These are the people in the government, academia, and regional bodies who are delivering on the new elements of the datum or the reference system in your country. And then underneath that, you'll have people that break up into working groups, and they're normally made up of people from the implementation committee and sometimes bringing in some outside help when you need it to solve particular problems. So the one on the left, that working group A, could be around how we're going to get a improved cause infrastructure in my country. Working group B might be thinking about the geoid model. You can have as many working groups as you want. And that all then feeds up and is explained through to your steering committee so that hopefully you can get funding and continued funding for doing what you're doing. Now, if you don't have this in your country, you are not alone. I asked this question to the subcommittee on geodesy in March, when we had members here from all around the world, all of the 5 UN regions. And I said, how many of you can put up your hand and tell me from your country, how many of you have a steering committee and an implementation committee that's looking at geodesy? Doesn't need to be called the Geodesy Committee, just a committee in senior government that actually think about geodesy at all or have it on the agenda. There were 3 hands. That's 3 out of about 40 different countries that were there being represented. 3. And I looked around the room, and the 3 that had their hands up, they have the best geospatial reference systems in the world. And they're not all from developed countries, but they have senior leadership who understand what they do and why it's important. So if there's one thing you can do from leaving here this week, it's to go back and get something like that set up within your country. You won't be able to do it on your own, but you can be the instigator. You can be the person who's leading that fight to get that senior level recognition of geodesy somewhere in your country. Because when you have that, everything else becomes a lot easier. A great example is what Alette talking about the other day. They're on the path to do that in South Africa. And they've now got ministers who not understand what geodesy is, and even better, they're excited about it. So I've got to learn from Alette as well. I can get sometimes ministers to listen, but I can't get them to get excited yet. So we need more advocates like that to do that within their governments. So this is, I just want to give a little bit of context, and in particular, for those of you who said that you haven't been involved or didn't know much about the United Nations Global Geospatial Information Management. This is our link. This is really our geospatial geodesy link into the United Nations. This group was set up about 15 years ago, and it is senior level leadership across all the member states of the UN, reporting into ECOSOC, which is the Economic and Social Council. So it's an opportunity for countries to get together, share ideas, learn from each other. And importantly, what it's led to is recognition that there's a few particular areas where we need to do things better. One of them was geodesy. We talked about the General Assembly resolution that was led through this committee of experts in the UN. And it has resulted in us being established with the Centre of Excellence. There's also another centre that's been set up that some of you might know about in Deqing in China, and that's the Geospatial Knowledge and Innovation Centre. So these are two areas where this community within UN-GGCE and the member states who make it up decided we need more to be done on geodesy, and we need more to be done on sharing and accessibility and the use of geospatial data. So we're focused on the geodesy side, and the centre in China is more focused on how to bring all these data sets together and help you make better decisions and help you address the actions that are in the SDGs. So this is where member states can get together and decide we need to do more on this, and this is our mechanism to do that internationally within the UN. There's a whole range of different working groups on things like land administration and management, disaster risk reduction, legal and policy frameworks, marine geospatial management. So I'd encourage you that if you don't know much about UN-GGCE, have a look at the website, and you might find that you're interested in being involved in one of the working groups, or you might even just find access to some of the resources that are available there that can provide guidance for the kind of work that you're doing. I think we covered that a lot the other day. Another one that I wanted to briefly touch on is the IAG. Ryan mentioned it the other day. If you're more from the academic or the scientific side and not as much interested in the policy side, this is an opportunity to get involved with the broader science community within the IAG. And again, whole range of different working groups and applications that you could be a part of. There's also the FIG, as Ryan mentioned. From my point of view, I always think about the IAG being more of the science side, whereas FIG it's like practical science. It's applying the science to things like land management and reference frames in your country. So it'd be worth looking at IAG and FIG as options for you to make personal commitment to say, I'm going to be involved in these communities and build networks. Have a look at both of them and think what would be most suitable for me. In some cases, it's both. And then there's also the standards community. So I mentioned ISO TC 211, that's the Technical Committee 211. That's mostly dealing with the geospatial standards within ISO, and the Open Geospatial Consortium, which I mentioned has a history of being more related to software development. But again, it's still very much standards based. So it's an opportunity when we go through our get back to our roadmap. It's an opportunity to think about what are you missing in your country at the moment? What are we missing? These are sort of my suggestions. I think at the moment, from a geodetic perspective, we're missing things like dedicated resources, capital funding, operational funding, a global work plan, and a risk assessment. I mean, these are big things that we're missing internationally. And that's part of the reason that the centre was established, is because we didn't have dedicated resources to actually do anything. Within UN-GGCE, there was very little time from the Secretariat to spend on geodetic work. So the centre was established with funding from Germany to try and address some of these root causes of the problems, where we don't have capital funding and we're not doing things in a coordinated way. The IAG is a scientific body and they have services that help run some of the infrastructure, but it's not like we have a global body that exists that is looking at what infrastructure do we need globally to address geodetic needs? What global capacity development challenges do we have? How are we going to work better together rather than duplicating effort? So it shows there's still a lot more work to be done, but the purpose of the centre is to be that glue and start to connect some of these elements together and address some of these root cause challenges that we have. I want to share with you a quick example of a group that I think who do it quite well. And this is the World Meteorological Organization, not the Metrology Organization, the World Meteorology Organization. I got it right this time. And many of you would know about this group. It's a specialized agency within the United Nations, and they bring together the policy part and the science part. If you look at, you don't need to be able to read it, but if you look at the blue bits on the left-hand side, that's the policy component. They have regional associations. They're looking at the finances. They're looking at the risk and the governance. And then on the far right-hand side, they have the scientific working groups. How are we going to develop better climate and meteorological data for our countries? What ground observatory systems do we need? How is the data being analysed and processed? And then in the middle, those grey areas are where these groups come together and talk together. And they have an executive council that meet and make decisions. And they have a Congress that sits on top of that, and they meet once every 4 years. So broadly speaking, this is a great structure where you're bringing together the operational requirements, the scientific requirements, and you've got the policy and the leadership and the governance all coming together to provide a global solution. And their focus of the WMO and the core funding that's provided by the countries, it's not set up to do gold standard forecasting or gold standard climate studies. It's about developing the basic needs of what countries need. There are projects on top of that look at more research and innovation type work and how to improve things over time. But the basic thing of what they're providing is a global basic observing network and global basic products that all countries need. And I think that's a great story. That's something that we could aspire to have from a geodetic side into the future. What that looks like, we don't know yet. And we have some work going on within the centre at the moment to try and develop an options paper of how we could evolve the governance structure of Geodesy globally to bring together the policy bit that we currently have in UN-GGCE with the scientific community more strongly so that it looks something like this, and that we have longer term funding and we have root cause analysis being done to manage risk properly. I'm not going to go through all this. It's there for your reference, but you can see this was Germany. I had got some slides provided by them. This is within Germany, all the different institutes that do something related to geodesy. And then here's all their users. And I can't even read that on my screen, but I put it there deliberately just to show, look how many users you get. And this is just within one country. Up the top's all the universities and applied sciences, and down the bottom are the other agencies and research institutions. And the number of users just growing and growing and growing every day for Geodesy. We underpin so much of what people do. This is managed within the German Geodetic and Mapping Authority, BKG. So again, they have a governance structure. They have a home in Germany where this work is done. They link across through to different areas of government departments. And they talk to the regional bodies. So they have regions, federal states within Germany, and they have to coordinate across them all. And each one effectively has a leader of the cadastre. which might be similar in your countries as well. So you've got to get the coordination and communication done across these regions before you make a decision about what you're going to do nationally. This is no surprise. I want you to see that the same challenges that you have are the challenges that other countries have. Australia, very similar. What I wanted to show you here is that there is a steering committee. This is that high level committee I was telling you about. They set the strategy, make sure that you have the funding. And this brings together groups across Australia and New Zealand. We actually do it together. It's another option. You could have a regional body. When you then get down to the working groups, you can see we've got working groups on addressing, geodesy, place names, tides and mean sea level. And then there were specific working groups that were set up for modernizing our geospatial reference system. It's also working groups on cadastre and topographic information. So this is a sort of sample structure of what you might want to set up your governance model like and how you can work together. And this is the metrology bit that we mentioned before. This is the laws and regulations around how position is determined in Australia. And again, this is just for your reference. You may want to come back to this and think, this could be a good way that I could get support from my manager or explain the importance of what we're doing. We might want to regulate that we're going to change and update the datum. This is how it was done in Australia, and some of the information that we record in that legal instrument that can be used. And you'll see a lot of this information matches what was in that Geodesy fact book. The example that we gave you from Australia, it comes from here. So if you have it very well defined, it makes it a lot easier for it to become a national regulation as well. All right, so I'd like to stop here, and I've got a few thought-provoking questions. We've still got time for a bit of a discussion, which is good. I'd be interested here about whether or not you've got this kind of governance structure in your countries, or you've got any type of governance structure at the moment. What did you see that's similar to some of the examples that we presented, and what's different? It'd be good for you to share with people, those who've tried this and maybe failed. Sometimes that's helpful as well. Like, we tried to do it this way, but it didn't work. And now we've got to try something different. So if you're open to sharing that, that's also very helpful. So I'll open the floor to any comments or questions. Yeah, thanks, Victoria.
Yeah, I'd like to share about the structure of hydrography in Kenya. So we are having a steering committee. It's called the Kenya National Hydrographic and Oceanographic Committee. And here we have the Ports Authority, the Maritime Authority, the Kenya Navy, Meteorological Department, and you get all the consumers and the producers of hydrographic data coming in together. So we answer the question of who and what do we want, who uses this data. If you go to KMA, they have the IMO state audit scheme. It's like an ISO standard kind of thing. And we help them to get them achieve these standards. So you find like KP has a mandate to play. Survey of Kenya ensures that the nautical charts are updated. They have the Environmental Management Authority also helping them with MAPOL, that is marine pollution. And then regionally, we have the IHO Regional Commission. And most of the guys from the survey offices, I ask you about the hydrographers in your office. I know them because at least every year we have virtual and physical meetings. And in these regional commission meetings, we talk about capacity development, the jobs you're supposed to be doing. And in 2023, my colleague, who is also a hydrographer from Kemfree, through our collaboration in the Survey of Kenya office, we won an award with Seabed 2030 to try to collect and collect all the hydrographic data and bathymetry data around the Western Indian Ocean. And this has been very easy because we have the regional meetings and the directors come and we tell them this is what we're planning to do. They invite us to their countries, talk to stakeholders with any hydrographic data, and this project is almost complete. Then at the international level, we have the International Hydrographic Organization, and we try to talk to the policymakers and the government, and Kenya ascended to IHO in 2021. And since then, we've been benefiting from capacity development. You find like Angola is also a IHO member state. They benefited from Kongsberg. They got some multiple surveys and a research vessel. And because the government, the bilateral agreement is binding, we have to pay subscription. We benefit from those subscription. And if there's any change in government, this was something that was passed by parliament, and parliament is a representative of the people. So the next government can't shoot us down that, we won't be funding this, we won't be paying subscription. It's already there on paper, and they have to pay. And we also have to benefit from being members of IHO through capacity, getting equipment, sponsorship to attend this kind of meeting. So it's something that is doable. Thank you.
That's a great example of how you've got a very strong governance structure for that offshore component. I'm not trying to embarrass anyone, but can we get what's happening on the land side from Kenya? Does anything like this exist from the land component? Who would like to comment?
I would also comment on that because the Geodetic office is under Survey of Kenya where the hydrography office is. I don't think there's something like that going on. Sorry.
Any other comments from Kenya first? I think you've got someone you can go and talk to about how to do this though, for the land side.
Yeah, that's correct. So I think for the land side, for the geodetic community in Kenya, we do not have any steering committee or working group. So purely all the responsibility lies on the Director of Survey and the Geodetic Division under the Director of Survey in the ministry. So there's no link at all in the community. So it's something that I think we can discuss with my colleague and the director, and with the support of Rachel, I think, to see if a working group can be created, because it's key for the sensitization as we've seen, and also for communicating, in the correct way to the decision makers. Thank you.
And a way that you can start this is you could start maybe by having a working group under your existing governance structure. So you're not taking over their governance structure, but the way that geodesy is handled in Kenya is critical, as we saw with the joining land and sea. So it's a very simple way to get started and get that senior leadership understanding of the value of what you're doing by fitting in within an existing governance structure. That could be something you could do rather than starting up something new. Just work with the existing one that you have. Something to do. Yes, over here. Thank you.
Merci pour. Thank you. Since 2009, we have a national organization, so it is lack of finance that is hobbling us. And we have updated this national plan with the new IGRF methodology, which brings together 30 data producing units in Senegal. The challenge right now is institutional anchoring. So the institution is going to host this program. So if that is not strong politically, we are smarting from that. At the moment in the program funded by World Bank, which is modernizing infrastructure, we are coming up with an economic model with the restructuring of the working models. The challenge in Senegal is an institutional one. We need a strong anchor. We need also a business plan that can make the investments sustainable. The organ is in place with all the data producing organs with a new reference. And I asked the question, for example, today we have a national plan. Should we, like you said, have a geodesic committee? Because the national plan, we have not detailed it out. For example, geodetics, do you need a national plan? Because it also has a cost implication. We need to detail it, and so that we can actually come up to speed. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you do need a national plan. I think the roadmap, if you go through the steps of the roadmap, that's almost going to be your national plan. If you answer all those questions and then show this to the team who are leading this initiative within your country, again, it could be an opportunity for you to get access to some of the funding as part of that national initiative that is taking place. So I would recommend going through the roadmap. That becomes your national plan on how you can deliver, and you'll be finding that you're linking or showing the benefit to all the other initiatives that are happening within Senegal. Yeah, one, and then Levi after that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, in Nigeria, I want to tell you that we have this committee formed about 3 years ago. It stems from the paper Dr. Dudu presented in one of our conference in Nigeria, and then the then Soviet General of the Federation, which is the current person anyway, decided to form that committee. In this hall, we have about 4 of us that are in that committee. Professor Lazarus Ojigi, Dr. Dudu himself, myself as the coordinator from the government side, and then Samir has always been our anchor on geodetic infrastructure, time immemorial anyway. So though we don't have it documented like a roadmap, but all we have done is exactly the way you have explained the roadmap to us here. So we have it. We have the committee at that level. We have the implementation committee. We have all the working groups, and 1 or 2 of the working groups have actually completed their work, save the one on parameter transformation. The leader of that working group passed on about a year ago, which we have just appointed another one in his replacement. Our challenge presently is looking for that champion man, as we have just taught us here. So one of the things we're taking home here is to look for that champion man and how to communicate geodesy to our government without mentioning geodesy and without telling them geospatial. So like I asked then, I would need to tell them what would happen to them if they don't do this. And of course, our major challenge in the last 24 months has been funding. We have actually not implemented the realized NGDM 2023 for Nigeria, but it's completed. Thanks to Dudu, thanks to Lazarus, thanks to all the committee, we have done it, but we only need fund to implement it. And from what Ryan mentioned, I think yesterday, he said, if we don't find, or maybe this morning, if we don't find a way to make sure we are working and then the project is constantly aligning with government priorities, we will not continuously get funding, and it will lead to the end of the whole project. So that for us, that's a take away from this capacity development, and then we can continue the work that we've been doing. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And congratulations on the work that you've done so far. I think that's fantastic. We've all got things we could be doing better, but you've done a lot of great work, and I think that's an excellent start. So I've got to go to Levi first, and then I'll come across here. Levi.
First of all, thank you for this very enlightening and presentation, and it's giving a lot of hope of opening doors to many possibilities of how to solve the problem that we have of being invisible, and how to convince. How to access resources to do what needs to be done. And the organization, the types of organization that you have shared is very enlightening. I've got 2 questions. One, it's the first time, I must be honest, to hear of the word metrology. And I'm trying to see the difference between metrology and standards, because those are the 2. They sound similar in the presentation. Then secondly, what you are encouraging us to organize, it sounds like it's going to be like an overall organization that will be ruling over application areas like cadastro. What would be the relationship with perhaps existing organizations like Survey Institute of Zambia and other application areas? Will there be like a conflict when they hear that, oh, there's this organization, you have to be like a working group or a subcommittee? How do we handle that?
Yeah, thank you. It's good to try and articulate that more clearly. So that's my fault. If there was some sort of global organization that was set up, it would really only be looking at some of the key elements of what we need to do together for global geodesy. So that would be to help us understand and coordinate to make sure that we have the very good VLBI and SLR infrastructure that we have. It would be around providing assistance, particularly in developing regions, to make sure that they have the GNSS systems that they need in those countries. And it would be about developing things like reference frames and the products and services that satellites need. So it's not getting into the details of national cadastre or anything related to that. It's very much around what do we need to do globally together to make sure that system is stable. Because at the moment, we're seeing that there are components of that global geodesy supply chain that are not reliable. They may not have failed yet, but they're not reliable because the technology is very old, or we have very limited capacity or capability. So we're trying to highlight those risks to governments so that they can make sure that we have a very strong foundation. And it means that all the products and services and then all the applications that you're referring to can still be done within a country. So it's not getting down to that level you mentioned. All of those communities would still exist in the same way that it currently operates. We're not talking about taking anything away from what we currently do. It's more about adding a level of governance at the top where senior leaders can work together. And to address your question on metrology, it's very similar to standards, but it's almost like a specific type of standards around measurement. And it's how you can accurately make measurements or calibrate information or calibrate instruments and then calibrate the data as well. So that's really what metrology is all about. Now we're over here, Burkina Faso. Yes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Just to be free. OK. Alors, donc, je vais.
I'd like to share with you the Burkina Faso experience when it comes to the organization. In my country, it started in 95-96 with a World Bank funded project where we put in place the first organization linked to geospatial information that we called the National Plan for Management of Spatial Information. So this is the structure which has a direct link with the production and management and usage of geospatial information. What we noted with this first organization is that at the end of the organization, there were funding challenges. So the meetings were difficult. So it did not work well after that. With the project of IGRF, Ethiopia and Burkina Faso were the pilot project to roll out this project in Africa. So we got down to it to come up with the first organization with all its weaknesses, and we proposed a governance model which integrates the highest political levels and going down to the technical level. So we have a governance committee which is handled at the Prime Minister's office. So that is why there are two meetings per year managed by the Prime Minister, and our ministry is a Ministry of Infrastructure, and there's a first Vice President, and the Minister of Economy is also part of that committee. And then we have the National Geographic Institute, which does a secretariat work, and in every ministry we have a geospatial information unit where there's a small technical group which brings together the actors in that particular ministry. So that is what we set up, and we're discussing this document with the government. There's a national commission which is evaluating this proposal. So we hope in June, we will get the final word. What we need to note, for those who want to have this kind of organization, we need to look at the economic model, and that is what is difficult, but important at the same time. Because when you create an organization which is funded by World Bank, for example, at the end of their intervention, you're going to run into all sorts of difficulties. So we need to ensure that the economic model is based on resources that you have at national level. So we have an economic model which is relying on our domestic resources. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent example of how you've got senior level buy-in and are getting support by aligning it with the economic requirements of the country. It's a very clever way to do it. So thank you for that. Yes, and then I'll come to you, Israel. Yep.
Moi,
I represent Mali, and I'm going to explain to you how we do geospatial management in Mali with all the problems that we had with the Geographic Information Actors. We understood that there was a problem. We need to try to talk to one another to get a solution how to manage information at the national level. In 2012, the government adopted a national Geographic Information Committee in Mali. It is a bit similar to what is in Burkina Faso. So the policy has two organs, a technical secretariat, which is managed by the Geographic Institute of Mali that I represent. The first organ is a national committee and GIS unit, which brings together all the actors, the users, and the producers. And this is presided by the minister. And there's a council which brings together all the ministries that are concerned with the geospatial information. So this is a cross-cutting area. I would like to say that it is all the ministers, and the council is chaired by the minister. So these are the two organs that run the national policy in Mali. So it is the same policy which is recommended for us to have a national geodetics organization, which will be involving all the producers of information. In 2023, the government adopted a national reference for the whole country, which will be used by all the producers of geographic information. So that is how geographic information is managed in Mali. We have meetings with the actors, and not so long ago, in February, we had a major meeting with all the actors and users of geographic information on this matter. And like my Burkina Faso colleague said, we would like to adopt a national action plan for an integrated management of geographic information. Luckily for us, in 2023, the government adopted a 2063 vision, and within this vision, 11 projects were picked as a priority projects. And luckily for us, management of geospatial information is at the heart of this project, part of the priority programs. And the major problem right now is the funding of our activities that we count on our government and the donors. I don't know whether you have advice to give us, but that is how geographic information is managed in Mali. Thank you.
Thank you very much for describing it. I think, again, it's a good example of where a lot of things are being done very well. And there may be still things that need to be done, but that's okay. You're on a path to success from what I hear. So I think that's excellent. Israel.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add to what Sovio Semio mentioned when he told us about the Nigerian situation. And what I wanted to add to it was the fact that, you know, in Nigeria, we have these 36 states, and then the governors of each state have the land of their states have vested in them, holding them in trust. Now, it's interesting to know that one of the states where I come from, as at last year, had just one core station, but as at this year, now has 6. And that change can only be because there was someone, a surveyor also, who is close to the political class who could facilitate such things. So I just wanted to also contribute that it would be good to have maybe these steering committees also look at delving into the political situation of the countries, because that might be a way to actually drive the sporadic type of support we expect. The truth remains that the type of core stations that they establish might not be able to contribute extensively to what we want to do, or to VLB and all of that. But the fact remains that it needs to contribute in the aspect of GNSS, and then it will be something worthwhile. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent example of how to influence people to get things done. We've got time for one more comment or question if anyone has it before we break. If not, you get an early coffee break. All right, that sounds good. Let's break there. We'll come back at 11 o'clock. Thanks, everybody.